Okay, he's a good boy. Mo, who's a good Mo? You're a good boy. I want to talk about how I turned a personal brand into a company. All right, so here's a quick story on how Exit 5 got started. In October of 2019, I left my job as VP of marketing at Drift, and I took a new job at a company called Privy as CMO. During my time at Drift, Drift was a software company really focused in the space of marketing, and they sold to B2B marketers. And while I was at Drift, I got really into marketing myself and like the craft of marketing because I was doing it at the company for the first time. And so I started basically writing about what I was doing while we were doing it at the company. The company started to grow really fast, and so people were really interested in what we were doing, and they said that our marketing was good. They wrote about it a lot. We had a really special company and a team and a culture that kind of bled everywhere online. And so the company created this pretty big brand for an early stage company. And I was able to basically, I was doing the marketing for that company. So I was able to ride the wave of that company. And while I was doing that, I was able to grow my career, and I was writing about what I was doing in marketing on LinkedIn. I kind of always had a little side project, I guess, starting back to having a podcast in 2014. I was working at a startup in like an account management role, and I started a podcast called Tech in Boston, where I went around to startup founders in the Boston area. I did 60 episodes, interviewed 60 founders and investors and CEOs. That was like the first thing that I had, and I've always kind of had this side itch to just create some stuff online through writing and content. So I've always had a podcast. And then as I get to Drift, I start really getting into marketing and writing about marketing, and I channeled that into LinkedIn. And I was able to kind of like unexpectedly grow a pretty big size following on LinkedIn. I went from like 10,000 followers to 20,000 to 50,000 to 70,000. But beyond that, because of the work that I did at Drift, I was getting a lot of messages from people who wanted to talk about marketing or how could I help their company. And so I started to see an opportunity where like I was building a real audience, and now all of a sudden I've been writing about marketing on LinkedIn. People are reaching out to me to do stuff. I was like, there's an opportunity to like make this marketing, content thing my job. And so on the side, while I was CMO at Privy, I started a Patreon channel. And that was the first attempt at like really trying to like monetize the audience that I had. I probably had 70,000 followers on LinkedIn, but a pretty strong awareness and reputation in the niche of B2B SaaS marketing where I was. And so I had a little bit of like a mini brand that had built. And I wanted to start something when I went to Privy because Privy was in a different industry than Drift. And so I still wanted to like keep writing about B2B marketing while doing my thing as the CMO at Privy. And I didn't want to start another podcast at the time. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a blog or anything. And my wife, I had noticed, was subscribed to these two comedians on Patreon. And I was like, what the heck is a Patreon? And it was like $10 or $20 a month to get access to this exclusive content. And I was like, well, what does she give you that she doesn't give you on her main podcast? And she's like, well, there's just kind of subscribers only content. She records a podcast once a week. They just kind of like write and have discussions in there. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to create a Patreon that is basically like a paid version of the stuff that I write and talk about marketing and my lessons and learnings and experiences. And I created a page, and it was initially called the A List on Patreon. And it was $10 a month. And I announced it, like I posted it on LinkedIn the day that I announced that I was leaving Drift. And I said, here's the backstory on why I'm leaving and what I'm going to do next. And it's behind the paywall for subscribers only. So it's like the first lead magnet. But I was blown away. I remember being on a flight home from an event that we were at when I posted it. And by the time we landed back in Boston from San Francisco, I had like 50 members, 50 paying members. So I went from a LinkedIn audience of, whatever, however many social followers, a vanity metric, to I had 50 people paying $10 a month for content from me. And then that became $500 a month and $1,000 a month. And within 6 months of creating this Patreon page, I had 1,000 members paying $10 a month. So it was $10,000 in revenue outside of my job. And I love marketing. Like marketing became my craft. And so it was like the thing that, and my wife and friends and whoever can tell you this, like this is just what my brain is always kind of doing. And so it wasn't like I was spending all these hours a day creating content. I might be reading an interesting book and find a marketing lesson, and instead of posting that on LinkedIn, I would like take a picture and post it in the Patreon, and I was able to post every day. And then I would do like share little audio snippets of things like, hey, here's one thing that I'm learning, like we're trying to hire for this role right now. And I never shared like private details about the company. I didn't talk about people on the team, just like general concepts and things I was learning. So like here's a hiring thing that I'm learning right now, and I did it X, Y, and Z way. And so it was just really easy and organic and authentic for me to contribute content there. So I ended up posting like once or twice a day, every single day. And that just grew over time. And it was midway through being at Privy that like I had this Patreon channel that was $10,000 a month, 1,000 members. And then during that time, one of the members said like, hey man, it's cool to hear from you and hear all your marketing stuff, but like there's 1,000 of us in here. We're all marketing professionals. Like let us talk to each other. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. And he's like, you should add a Facebook group. And so I added a Facebook group, and I didn't pick it for any particular reason other than this guy, Henry, said it was good. And then we had been in a couple like parenting Facebook groups when having kids. And I was in like a workout one, and I was like, all right, fine. And that was a huge moment because that then unlocked scale. And so instead of me having to post every day and making it about me, all of a sudden I go in the Facebook group and there's like dozens of questions happening every day, new posts, comments, videos of without me having to do anything. So, oh, hi, buddy. Where's mom? Sure. While I finish this. Yeah. So I added a Facebook group to the Patreon page, and that's when kind of the next level of growth happened, because it went from being my private place to share marketing thoughts to a real community. And right around the time I launched the community, maybe fast forward 6 months to a year, I ended up leaving Privy. I went back to Drift for a little bit, and then I left again because this thing was just so strong and calling me as a full-time job that I was having a hard time like wanting to work for somebody else, because this Exit 5 thing was growing, and I wanted to do that. And so I made a couple of decisions. Number one was I rebranded it. It was initially called the A-List. Then it was called DGMG. So we got now, 2,000-3,000 members on Facebook. You pay through Patreon, you get access to the Patreon channel and the Facebook group. But I realized it was too tied to me, and the path that I wanted to go on was to create a real business and a real asset, not just like the Dave marketing show. And so I decided to rebrand it from A-List. Then it was called DGMG, which was tied to my initials, right? Dave Gerhardt Marketing Group. My wife says I'm awesome at naming things. And I decided to change the name. I talked to this guy, Harry Dry, who's been really helpful in my journey and just is such a good copywriter. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking about renaming Exit 5. I'm thinking about renaming DGMG. And he's like, here's some naming advice. You can do something literal or lateral. Literal meaning like the Dave Gerhardt Marketing Group or B2B Marketing Professionals Club, right? But he said, or you could do a lateral name, which is like come up with a term, like try to find a term and come up with a story that you can relate back to the brand. And I started to think of like a place, a destination. And I thought of Vermont, because my wife and I, when we were living in Boston, we'd always come up to Vermont to visit her parents, hang out on the weekends, and I'd be like stressed or stuck on a problem at work. And then I'd be off the grid walking through the woods, and like, boom, you get creative ideas, you get clarity on ideas. And so I was like, oh, what if there's something around this? Like, I wonder if we could call it something. And I was thinking about 89 North is the road we go on. And I said, oh, Exit 5. That's her parents' exit. Exit 5. So I was like, what do you think of this, Harry? He liked it. I got to make sure this didn't go away. Cool. He liked it. It worked. I went to look it up on GoDaddy to see if the domain was available, and it was. It was like $400. And I also thought it was good because it was like it's 2 words, but it's very short. Exit 5. It's very easy to remember. It's very clean. It's a very clean looking domain. And if you've tried to name anything lately, it's almost impossible because you think of a name and you go to the domain and it's already been taken, and you don't want to do something that's not a .com, which is a mess. So came up with Exit 5, came up with the name. and then basically repositioned everything from DGMG to Exit 5. The other reason I knew it was time to rebrand, because every time I'd meet with my accountant, he would always ask me, so how's GBMG going? Or how's GDL? And I'm like, dude, you know my initials. And it was a terrible name. So rebrand to Exit 5, that made it a little bit more real in my mind, but it was still mostly on Patreon and a Facebook group. I made a bunch of platform changes over time. I was on Kajabi for a little bit. I used Patreon, obviously. I used Supercast. I did a homegrown thing. And I've just been on a bunch of different platforms. And eventually, last year, I decided to make what I thought was a big jump and move the community to Circle. Circle gives us a custom web app, mobile app, basically fully kitted as our own app, all managed. It's like a mini CRM and marketing automation system too. It's really good. They'll love that. But I was nervous to make the move. So I wanted to make the move for two reasons. One, I rebranded. This was my journey to try to like legitimize this business beyond the Dave show. So I rebranded it. That was number one. But then I felt like I needed to really move off of Facebook to be a real thing and a real product. I don't think Slack is the right solution for communities for a bunch of different reasons. And so I didn't want to do it on Slack. And Tim, who runs customer success at Circle, hit me up. And he's like, if you ever want to talk about moving off of Facebook, we can help. And they were super helpful. And they hooked me up with this guy, Jordan Godby, who builds out Circle communities for people. And so we migrated off of Facebook. And the reason I didn't want to do it was because I had close to 4,000 members paying $10 a month. The payment was attached to Patreon. They don't really manage the Facebook. They don't. It doesn't really connect to Facebook group. I can't like one-to-one map billing over. So basically, I had to tell everyone who's being billed right now, like, we're gonna cancel your account. We're gonna go to this new platform, or you have to manually move your credit card. And so I ended up churning probably like 25K in MRR from deciding to make the move off of Facebook. And it wasn't just the revenue that hurt. It was also, there was a lot of people that were mad because I would say 50% of the people liked the Facebook group. I'll still get comments say, oh, the Facebook group was better. But I wanted to make an investment in a real platform and build a real asset. And I knew that what I was building would have value, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. And so I was like, all right, I'm willing to take this short-term pain of the revenue churn, of the headaches from members, of moving over, of starting over in a community. I was willing to take all that. And then fast forward a year later now, we've gained all new members back. And I also think we churned out a lot of members who weren't a good fit for where we're going. A lot of people joined because it was me. It was like me sharing my marketing thoughts. And then over time, it morphed into this community focused on B2B marketers, mostly in SaaS, and we're sharing that stuff. And so now we've lost all those members, and that's a bummer. People were upset, but like I think a company, like as this thing became a company and a business, just like anything else, there's going to be change, and what it started at is going to continue to evolve. And so I had the opportunity to evolve it into this business. And so I just took the pain and said, all right, we're going to do this now. And then things are going good, but it's still just me. And we started over the last year or so to get a ton of inbound from sponsors. And so we had this paid community, we had a newsletter, we're doing a podcast, but I started to get inbound from companies that wanted to, hey, you have the Exit 5 podcast, can we sponsor that? And I was like, sure. Let's make up a price, let's make up some metrics. And like, I think that's how anything gets started. So I got like my first inbound sponsor. They paid like 10 grand for a 3-month sponsorship or something. And then they wanted to do more and renew. At the same time, I started to get more inbound from people who wanted to do things like webinars or promotions on their end. A lot of people had been reaching out to me to do like a LinkedIn influencer type of post. And I had been doing them solo, but I wanted to fold them into Exit 5. And so we started to like come up with packaging and bundles. And so like, it started to become a media business at the same time. And then really quickly, within a year, the sponsorship revenue started to outpace the community revenue. But what's cool is that they can be two separate products. And so the advertising doesn't actually happen in the community. We can build this massive top of funnel through social media, through our email list. And a lot of CMOs today are trying to do things with influencers and niche communities, and Exit 5 is just like the timing is right. And so we've seen an incredible amount of demand over last year for people who want to do content partnerships and work with us because we have this niche audience of B2B marketers. You could go spend on Google, or you could go find a relevant community to work with. And so we do a lot of like, the demand for that has grown, and we're like constantly thinking of how can we create more inventory. So this is all basically happening solo. And then I ended up in the position that I think a lot of creators get in, which is like, it's this kind of golden handcuffs thing, which is like, I want to do more. I want to keep growing, but I want to kind of like be creative and explore other areas. There's a lot that needs to be managed with this business, but I was really enjoying working solo. I didn't want to have to, I had some contractors and freelancers that have helped me along the way, but it was really on me to do everything. And I was kind of just feeling like a little bit stuck, but I didn't want to hire somebody. And so everybody in my life that I talked to was like, you should hire somebody. You have this amazing asset, this business, you can continue to grow it. Hire someone to manage it, hire someone to run it, to free you up from doing a lot of the day-to-day stuff. And I knew that was the right idea because I wanted to expand beyond the Dave Show, as I talked about before, and create a real asset. But I just was having a hard time being willing to like give up my life and my schedule in that. So working solo, it's kind of just you. Like you can decide, like, are you going to work for 2 hours now, or are you going to go, go play 9 holes of golf or do whatever. The hours don't matter, right? But if I was going to bring somebody in, somebody junior, I don't really want to, am I going to pay for somebody junior and have to spend all this time training them, and they don't know who I am. They don't know like my personality. They don't know how I work. I can just make decisions on my own today. I don't have to answer to anybody. Is that right? And I just had this light bulb one day where I was like, you know what I need? I need Dan Murphy. Dan's somebody that I work with at 2 of the last companies I was at. I was like, and I said to my wife, I was like, I wish I could just snap my fingers and have Dan. And she's like, well, have you even reached out to him? And I was like, no. And she's like, why not? And I just, in my head, even though the business was basically a 7-figure business solo, I still felt like, I guess like imposter syndrome in some way. I'm like, wait, I'm going to have somebody I'm going to hire someone. I'm going to spend money to hire someone. This feels so weird. And, I called Dan. I hadn't even talked to him in maybe like a year. I wasn't sure what he was doing. I think he was in between things. And we got on the phone. I told him all about Exit 5. He looked at a bunch of stuff, and like, no joke, the next day he's like, dude, you have something amazing here. Like, I'm in. And we were really familiar in our past lives from something like Sales Hacker. That's something that we studied and we actually did a lot of sponsorships and work with. And so we took a lot of inspiration from there. Dan and I have kind of always worked in like content and product marketing capacities together. And so we really get along on the storytelling thing, on the story and strategy side of things. But also we've worked together for 7 years. We've had many interactions and real candid conversations. And I think to build a remote company, be home, have a distributed team, and for me to be able to have somebody that can run the business, I had to have somebody that I could trust, because I just was at a point in my life where I didn't want to spend the time like training somebody, and I didn't want to have somebody, get their day ruined because I said like no, or I gave direct feedback. Dan knows how to push me back. He knows I can be 100% transparent with him. He can push me, I can push him. Nobody's feelings are going to get hurt. It just made it really easy. And so I was like, all right, I'll get you in. I don't care what it takes salary wise. I think, again, like the pain of moving off of Facebook, I'm willing to spend a bunch of money to bring you in, because I think it's going to make things better in the future, and, shrink your earnings now, but have the opportunity to grow 20, 30, 40, 50%. And Dan came in, and initially I was just going to not really do anything. I was like, I want to treat this like a property. You manage it, you run it, you just send me updates. But it was something really quickly about like, once Dan got into the business, it just like relit this fire in me. Like, I'm looking at every metric, I'm looking at every analytics, I'm in calls, I'm writing, I'm doing things that I haven't done in months, because I think I just was like coasting at my own pace before and doing my own thing. Whereas like, once I have somebody in the business, we're gonna like, it was awesome to have somebody in Slack to talk to have somebody be like, hey, what do you think of this idea? And just gave me energy in an unexpected way. So Dan and I got really excited quickly. Then we went from like, he was just going to manage it, and I was just going to get updates, to like, we need to hire somebody. And we found Matt, who was a community member a couple a couple months later. Then we worked as a team of 3 for like 6 months, and things continued to grow. And we hired Matt to basically run and manage our membership and future membership products that we have. So we have our paid community. Matt owns acquisition and retention for that. Dan has owned all of the sales, all the operations, so many systems and business processes. And like we have a real team operating cadence now that Dan has helped create. And we kept growing. We built playbooks for things. So it used to be like a sponsor does a webinar. It's just I hop on. Now we have a prep call. We have a deck. It's everything that we've invested in. It's like the level has been raised, and it's given me so much more energy and feeling of like, wow, this is a real business. When it's me solo, I can just kind of mess around and hop on a webinar. Now we have a team. We're doing prep calls. We're doing research. Everything has gotten better from making this investment. And so the business continued to grow. We knew we wanted to like do this for a couple of years and just have fun and see where it goes. And so we decided in May that it was time to hire 2 more people. We needed kind of like an operations person that can just kind of be in all the meetings, take notes, follow up with sponsors, manage pipeline. We have an event called Drive coming up, manage all the logistics for that. Basically like an all-purpose person. And so we wanted to find like a new grad. This would be somebody's first job out of school where you just kind of like soak in everything and we found Anna, and she's been awesome so far. And then we needed a head of content. We needed someone to manage all the content. We have a podcast that goes out twice a week, a newsletter that goes out every week. We wanted to invest in our newsletter product. Instead of just me writing some ramble about marketing, we wanted to really hire a good writer, do research, turn that into an email worth getting every week. And we found Danielle, and now our business is on pace to grow 100% this year. We have a team of 5. It's given me energy from a year ago. I kind of feel like I wrote about this recently where I feel like I was letting some of my muscles atrophy like in my prime. Like I should be creating something. I should be working. I should be going after something. I think as a solopreneur and just working for myself in that moment, it was good for the 2 years that I did it, and allowed me to build a home and have an amazing family life and be set up on a really good path now. But I found that like having a team, investing in Exit 5, also this is like 100% bootstrap. So I'm paying for all of this. Now the business has been profitable since day 1, but we have, real cat, like we're really investing a lot of money into this business, into people, into content and programs. And I think I needed some of that skin in the game. I needed to have swipe the credit card for a $2,000 software subscription. And you're like, well, what are we going to do with that? It's awoken a lot of things inside me as a creator and an operator. And I think I'm also evolving like career-wise. I've been a B2B marketer and a thought leader on LinkedIn for like the last 5 years. I enjoy talking about marketing, but I also feel like building a business, building a company, creating a media company, being in this space, having a strategy, that has helped me grow and build some new muscles. And it's been a lot of fun.